From the corners of the internet to the wave signals in your brain, you have now synced into All Aware. Against the norm, you are expanding your mind and educating your soul. Let the transmissions commence.
Broadcasting off of the grid in Central Texas, this is the All Aware Podcast. Please stand by for your host, Nathan Rashawn.
108 again Sunday afternoon. The combination of hot temperatures and high humidity will combine to create a dangerous situation in which heat illnesses are likely.
We just got done with that A124, must have a squirrel on or something, but see what Scott wanted me to go do next.
And if you can hear me right now, that means you've tuned in to another episode of All Aware. And yes, that's right. I am your host, Nathan Rashawn. Last week, we began to talk a little bit about, we were supposed to talk about GESARA. That's the name that we go by there. Makes it a little bit easier than the full name, also known as a NESARA. And if you're not sure exactly what that stands for, that's the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. There's also a global version, which goes by the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act. And it is a new form of federal, that's not the word, it's a new form of monetary governance that will be more focused on the people, being for the people, and being a sustainable system that will allow humanity to progress on a more enlightened timeline and not necessarily cause hardships on people like the current system does. So the current system that we're under is a fiat currency system, meaning that it is a baseless system backed on nothing. People sometimes think that the money is backed on gold, but that changed early on in the 1900s when the IRS was formed and the Act of 1871 was initiated. And later in 1913, the act that created the Federal Reserve, which then took money that was backed by gold, that had value, and turned it into a asset-backed currency. What I mean by that is the currency literally was based on nothing. Some people call it oil currency. Some people call it enslavement currency because each person was traded using this money. And if I can, I'll go into a little bit more later about what I mean about that. And the money was based, or our financial system currently, and this is worldwide, pretty much in the developing countries and even in the, in the developed countries, and now even in the undeveloped countries, this system is widespread, this debt-based system. Now, when you have a debt-based system, it is not meant to bring society further. It is not meant to be freeing or be uplifting to the person, the common person in that society. It's debt-based. Debt's negative. Debt means you owe something. When you owe something, that makes you inservient to the debtor. So it's impossible to get out of that circle. They call it the rat race. You're in the rat race. You're on that little wheel. You're spinning and spinning and spinning. And no matter how fast you go, how hard you work, you're still on that wheel. You might be able to relax a little bit more sometimes. If you move really, really, really fast on that wheel, you get it spinning. You might be able to just hang on and go in circles a couple times on that wheel and not have to exert any force. But eventually that wheel is going to slow down and you're going to need to start running again to get that momentum up and keep that wheel spinning. That's the debt-based economy. That's the debt-based society that we currently live in the United States of America and throughout the world. It benefits a very small few, and those are the few that intentionally wrote the law, and those families and generations that were influenced in writing this travesty of a financial system. And anyone else, it affects negatively, and it causes undue hardship onto good, decent human beings. Now, the National Economic Security and Reformation Act is something that has been planned and something that has been established for a very long time. Now, it's been suppressed, and it's been sometimes purposefully kept in the background until the right time was to enact this type of act and bring it forth into the world. It has been, they have tried to implement this. Those would be the people who work for the people. JFK was one of these people, Ronald Reagan. And there's been a few others in the history of our country that have attempted to set the stage to allow for this type of a program, this type of a system to be enacted. Every time it has been thwarted, it has been stopped by the global elite, what I call them, by the people who control the purse strings of the biggest corporations, the biggest companies, and of the biggest governments in the world. So stay tuned. When we get back here on All Aware, we're going to go into the NESARA Act, and we're going to talk about what exactly this system does. Things like abolishing the income tax, abolishing the IRS, establishing presidential and congressional elections different from what they currently are. We're going to talk more about it, so you stay tuned. This show is all about GESARA, and we're going to get into it deep tonight. Stay tuned. I'm your host, Nathan Roshan. We'll be back right after this.
You are listening to the All Aware podcast on the TrueRants network.
The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. Because it's the outsiders who change the world and who make a real and lasting difference. Nothing worth doing ever came easy. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. The future belongs to the people who follow their heart no matter what the critics say. We must always remember that we share one home and one glorious destiny. We all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all salute the same great American flag. Our best days are yet to come.
Welcome back to the show. If you like what I do here, if you like the things I bring to you, you can always hit me up on social media. Honestly, I am not a huge social media platform person. I do have some accounts, but I'm not on everything. So I do want to hear your comments, though, and any kind of questions, or if you have any suggestions of things you want me to cover or ways you want me to improve this show. I really, really, really like to hear what you have to say. So you can find me on Facebook. It's just facebook.com/allaware. And then you can also find me on Twitter. It's @allawareshow. Nathan Roshan @allawareshow. That's what I am on Twitter. Or you could just type in twitter.com/allawareshow. and that will bring you to my page. And that's the same with Facebook. If you go to Facebook, facebook.com/allawareshow, that's going to bring you to my page there as well. Let's keep in touch. Talk to me. Give me your opinions, your ideas, your suggestions, your critiques, your comments. All that is welcome. If you want to donate to my cause and help the show out that way, there are monetary things that need to happen for this show to be hosted and produced and on the airwaves of the intranets, as I call them. We also have a donate page. If you go to TrueRants.net, you'll see a donation button on the top bar there. And I believe there's also one on our contact page on there. Feel free to donate. Any amount of money will do. It does help with the production costs and my time and the costs of the programs and different things I have to use in order to get the show complete. Honestly, it's a lot cheaper now than it used to be, but it does still cost, money to do this, as with anything in life. So anything you have will be greatly appreciated. And on to the show. So, GESARA. Most of the things that I'm going to cover tonight have been compiled by Nancy Detweiler. She has a website, intothelight.news, and she has done a very good job of compiling a bunch of information about New Age things, spiritual subjects, and the like. And it's a good resource for things like information on NESARA. She also talks about star seeds and light workers, Galactic Federation of Light, laws of attraction, and has a section on the secret space programs that we covered, I think, a couple years ago here on All Aware. So that's always a good resource for you. And the information that has been compiled largely comes from James Rink. All right. James Rink is a meditation practitioner, researcher, and author. Also does some video productions. He has a website called Super Soldier Talk, where he goes into the awakening of humanity. He uncovers topics such as brainwashing, traumas, talks about the military abduction laboratories. He wrote a book called Lone Wolf, and in that book, he will chronicle the projects that happened through MK Ultra and the Super Soldier experimentation program. And he also developed something called a Neo meditation device, which is an energizer that helps relax people during meditation. So if you're interested in any of that, you can check him out at supersoldiertalk.com. And he does have a 3-hour documentary called NESARA that you are able to look up on YouTube and watch as well, to give you a little bit more insight into the history of this than we're going to go to on this program, and how it all started in the king and queen days, and how it all came about. Feel free to check that out. So, NESARA, what is it going to do? Well, what is it? We talked about that before the break. It's a system that is going to bring a more fair and prosperous financial program to the world. There was 2 separate systems called GESARA, which is the global equivalent of this form, the Reformation Act, and there's a national one. They have, when Trump was in office, his first line of work was going around the world. He met with a lot of world leaders. Some was known, some not so widely known, and he was able to get most people on board with this program, so that the program has now changed to just one program, GESARA, the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act. The UN, which I still think is an evil organization, but they are aware of this. They know what's happening. They know who has signed on to this, and that it is the future, whether they like it, if it goes against their agenda or whatever, I don't know, but it is what is planned and what is going to be brought into this world to more fairly treat the citizens of planet Earth. So the system. Well, first, in order to talk about the system, we have to that's going into effect. We have to know what happened to need such a program to be brought upon the world. So we have to go all the way back to the 1800s. And like I said in the introduction about the IRS and about the law of 1871, or the act, well, in 1892, bankers adopted a manifesto. It declared, "We, the bankers, must proceed with caution and guard every move made, for the lower order of people are already showing signs of restless commotion." This is quoted from the document. "Prudence will therefore show a policy of apparently yielding to the popular will until our plans are so far consummated that we can declare our designs without fear of any organized resistance." Again, this is quoted from the Bankers Manifesto, 1892. "The Farmers Alliance and Knights of Labor organizations in the United States should be carefully watched by our trusted men, and we must take immediate steps to control these organizations in our interest or disrupt them." They're stating right there in their manifesto that they are scared of the people and of prosperity, and that they still have an interest to control what is being done in the world and in America, and they intend to stop anything that is not for their benefit. They also make notice that the courts must be called to their aid, that they must collect debts, bonds, and mortgages, and do foreclosures as rapidly as possible to prevent the freedom and the free monetary abundance of the common person. In order to warn Americans about the 1892 Bankers Manifesto, U.S. Congressman Charles Lindbergh, congressman from Minnesota, between 1907 and 1917, he came upon Congress sometime during his term of office and spoke about this document. Of course, nothing, it's probably laughed off and nothing happened, and the corruption continued to unfold until about 1910. John DiNardo, professor of public policy and economics at the University of Michigan, wrote an article, The Federal Reserve Act. It said, on the night of November 22nd, 1910, a small group of surrogates of the most powerful bankers of the world met under the veil of utmost secrecy. Now, what he's talking about there is what we know as the meeting that occurred at Jekyll Island. Jekyll Island was a secret, elitist island that had a resort-style hospitality estate on it, where they met under fictitious names often, or if not fictitious, shorthanded names. They may have went by only their first name and then a last initial, or they may have changed their name altogether. But a secret group of bankers and high elites during the early 1900s met to unveil a plan to enslave, essentially formally enslave all of mankind through financials, through a creation of central banks, through the creations of an act that they call the Federal Reserve. It isn't federal, and it isn't a reserve, but that's the whole point. That's how they sold it to you. So after the next few weeks, these men perpetrate under the orders of their masters, the more elites, the 13 ruling families, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and so forth, the most colossal and devastating fraud ever inflicted upon the American people and soon the world. The fraud became known as the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. It foisted upon the People's Congress of the United States and empowered and commissioned this secret cabal of world-dominant bankers to print United States currency, something that had currently been done by the Treasury Department of the United States and was backed by gold, making it very valuable and making it a currency that doesn't lose value as ours does today. Ours today, we have inflation, we have deflation, we have a dollar that could buy you something, in the early 1900s. Now that dollar is basically worthless. Even in like the 1940s and the 1950s, you could buy a house for $1,000. You could buy a car, for a couple $100, $500-$600. Today, it doesn't even closely translate. You might be able to rent a room somewhere for $500. It's probably not going to be the Taj Mahal. You might also be able to buy a car for that, but it's also not going to be something that hasn't been kicked around and ran into the ground. So the money doesn't equate. Now, if it was backed on gold, the money, we'd be talking a different language right now, because the money from the 1950s would be still worth the same as our money now. It would have translated equally upon the years, if that makes any sense. So after these world dominant bankers were able to create their central banking system and print United States currency, with a note, it says on your currency, this is a Federal Reserve note, basically allowing people to, allowing the Federal Reserve System to take full control of the printing of U.S. currency. And then this corporation then loaned that money to the federal government, which then used it as its currency for daily trade and barter and so forth. So that started the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, beginning one of the biggest frauds brought upon the world ever, at least in our known history. And in recent times, in this era, in this age, I should say, around 1933, possibly 1934, H.R. 1491, a bill said on page 83, under the new law, money is issued to the banks in return for government obligations, bills of exchange, drafts, notes, trade acceptances, and banker acceptances. The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by the credit of the nation, aka the people, me and you, and other assets. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people of the nation. This enslaved us, written right here on page 83 of H.R. 1491, that was introduced into the Congressional Record March 9th, 1933. Our official enslavement through debt and banker control right there. And then you have U.S. Senate document number 43. It was offered up by the 73rd Congress in the first session in 1934. This document, further enslaving us, states the ultimate ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government, i.e. law amounting to mere user and use must be in acceptance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. They are, without your written knowledge or approval, now saying that anything that is considered ownership belongs to them, belongs to the state. It doesn't really belong to anybody else. It's the state's property. It's theirs just because they say it, because they demand it. So we lived under this system all the way up until 1970s. Guess what happened in the 70s? They didn't have enough. They wanted more. So now they created a land bank. Of course, they call it the Federal Land Bank. The Federal Land Bank. What did this bank do? It foreclosed on farmers' mortgages all throughout the Midwest. In all the cases, farmers were defrauded by the banks with the approval of the Federal Reserve System. The court cases eventually became known as the Farmer Claims Program. So in the Farmer Claims Program, the farmers were defrauded by the banks with the approval of the Federal Reserve System, as we just said. In 1978, an elderly ranch farmer in Colorado purchased a farm with a loan from the Federal Land Bank. After he died, the property was passed on to his son, Roy Schweizinger Jr., who was a retired military general. Soon after, a Federal Land Bank officer, and also with a federal marshal, appeared on his property and informed him the bank was foreclosing on his farm and to vacate within 30 days. Without his knowledge, his deceased father signed a stipulation which reverted the property back to the Federal Land Bank in the event of the borrower's death. These are the ways that they trick you into reverting all of your property and all of your hard work to them. For what reason? Because, of course, they shouldn't have any rights to your hard-earned things and work, whether it's a loan or not. As long as you paid your loan back, nothing should revert, but it did in this case. That's how they got you. Of course, Roy was outraged, so he filed a class action lawsuit in the Denver federal court system in 1978, but the case didn't go very far and the suit was dismissed from filing incorrectly. This began Roy Schweizinger's investigation into the inner workings of the banking system, where in 1982 he was given a contract by the U.S. Senate and later Supreme Court to investigate banking fraud. Because he was under a strict non-disclosure order, he was not allowed to tell the media what he discovered, but in the late 80s he began sharing his knowledge with others, including high-ranking military personnel who helped bring about a class action lawsuit against the federal government. I believe a lot of this was some of the lead up to certain individuals sitting down and coming up with the NESARA or GESARA Act. Something good did happen, though, in 1988 in Denver in the federal court system. After an appeal was filed in 1987 by Roy Schweizinger, the Denver federal court system ruled that indeed the banks had defrauded the Baskervilles and proceeded to reverse its bankruptcy decision. But when the foreclosed property was not returned, they filed a new lawsuit. Eventually, 23 other farmers, ranchers, and Indians swindled by the banks in the same manner would join in the case. The case number was 92-Charlie-1781, and it was Farmers Union, a new union that was formed for this, against the Federal Land Bank and the Farmers Credit System. The district court ruled in their favor and ordered the banks to return the stolen properties with help from either federal marshals or the National Guard. But no payments were made. The farmers declared involuntary Chapter 7 bankruptcy against the Federal Land Bank and the Federal Credit System. The banks appealed their case, insisting they were not a business, but a federal agency. Therefore, they were not liable to pay the damages. The farmers' legal team adopted a new strategy, and according to the Federal Land Bank's 1933 charter, they are not allowed to make loans directly to applicants, but instead could only bank loans or back loans as a guarantor in cases of default. Because the Federal Land Bank had violated this rule, the farmers' legal team was able to successfully sue the bank for damages. Word of the lawsuit began to spread. The legal team would teach others how to fight foreclosure and to help them file lawsuits as well. You had celebrities such as Willie Nelson join in the cause and help raise money during his Farm Aid concerts. Willie Nelson is a great guy living in Hawaii. He's done a lot for patriotic causes, and I'm sure everybody knows he's real big supporter of marijuana and everything marijuana. So that's a little tidbit there for you. In the 1990s, Roy Schweizinger, still pissed, brought another case before the United States Supreme Court. Some of the content of the case is sealed from public eyes, but most of it or some of it you can view today. You can go to supremelaw.org and search Farmers Union against U.S. Supreme Court and find it there. In addition, they ruled that the U.S. federal government and banks had defrauded the farmers. This is now the Supreme Court, and all U.S. citizens out of a vast sum of money and of property. The court ruled the shocking truth that the IRS was a Puerto Rican trust. The IRS is a Puerto Rican trust. All right. So again, something else proving not federal by any means and corporation. Yes. The court ruled in the 1990s that the Federal Reserve was unlawful, that the income tax amendment was only ratified by 4 states and therefore was not a legal amendment, that the IRS code was not enacted into positive law within the Code of Federal Regulations. If you don't know what positive law is, it's positive law are laws that have been enacted by a properly instituted and recognized branch of the government, which the IRS is not. The U.S. government illegally foreclosed on farming homes with the help of federal agencies. There was irrefutable proof that was presented by a retired CIA agent, testimony and records of the bank's illegal activities, and the evidence that the Farmers Union claims did become legitimate. The implications of such a decision was profound. All gold, silver, and property titles taken by the Federal Reserve and IRS must be returned to the people. That was the finding of this court. The legal team sought assistance from a small group of benevolent visionaries consisting of politicians, military generals, and business people who have been secretly working to restore the Constitution since the 50s. A 4-star U.S. Army general received title and receiver of the 1933 United States bankruptcy. When the case was brought before the U.S. Supreme Court, they ruled in his favor, giving the Army general title over the United States Incorporated. Legal action was then passed onto the Senate Finance Committee and Senate Sam Nunn, who was working with Roy Schlesinger. So it seems like here in the 1990s, we find that that the United States corporation is already having some issues, and it has already declared bankruptcy in the 30s, operating as a business. In 91, President George H.W. Bush issued an executive order, October 23, 1991, which provided a provision allowing anyone who has a claim against the federal government to receive a payment as long as it's within the rules of the original format of the case. You can find Executive Order 12778 or Executive Order 12778 Principles of Ethical Conduct on the Department of State website. That's www.doh.state.fl.us. And then you'll want to proceed to the Federal Executive Order section. So, according to the Federal Reserve Act, all present and succeeding debts against the U.S. Treasury must be assumed by the Federal Reserve. The Farmer claims the legal team was able to use the executive order to not only force the Federal Reserve to pay out damages in gold-backed currency, but allow them to receive legal ownership over the bankruptcy of the United States corporation. When they wanted to collect damages, the team used an obscure attachment to the 14th Amendment, which most people are not aware of. After the Civil War, the government allowed citizens to claim a payment on anyone who suffered damages as a result of the federal government failing to protect its citizens from harm or damages by a foreign government. President Grant had this attachment sealed from public eyes, but somehow someone on the farmers' legal team was able to get a hold of it. It specifically specifies damages by a foreign government. The foreign government is the corporate federal government, which has been masquerading to the public as the constitutional government. And this is exactly what is collapsing right now, guys. This is exactly what's happening right now. There are 2 governments running the United States at this very moment. In February of 2021, okay, you have the United States Corporation, a bankrupt entity that has been obviously, as we're reading now, has been bankrupt for some time, at least since the 90s. But it got expunged, or it got canceled under President Trump's watch. Through his executive orders and his administrative tasks that he performed, he was able to, again, to reinforce the bankruptcy and the conclusion of the United States Corporation. They are still like people, like a business owner who lost everything from fraud and just terrible business practices. They are trying to act as if their business still stands and going through the day-to-day operation as if it does. That is what you see in what you think is the White House. That's what you see with Biden and Harris and Congress and so forth and so on. The things that you are seeing is the failed and bankrupt and defunct United States corporation. It doesn't exist. They have no real authority. They have no power, but they're still playing the game because they don't know what else to do and because they know that they are screwed. Everything that you see under that system right now is an illusion. It is an illusion that's being allowed to play out so that you can eventually come to terms with what's going on. When you are put under duress, when you are put under hypnosis, really, for your entire life, thinking something is one way when it is not, thinking that you live under the United States Constitution, the Republic Constitution that is for the people, by the people, and is backed by you, when you think you live under that, but you're actually been sold to a corporation as an asset and traded and valued based on how much money you make, because your money is their money. It's hard to wake up from that. So it's being allowed to play out so that we can slowly come out of this psyop of control and learn the truth, and people can do it at their time and at the way they need to do it. So you are seeing that can be proven. They're on a set. They're not in the White House. Now, can I prove that they've never been in there? I cannot, but I can guarantee you that everything you see on the news right now is them playing their part. They're playing a game. It is not the White House. That is not the setup of the White House. That is not the wallpaper. That is not the desk. It is not the location. It's been proven. There is proof out there. It is proven. It is Castle Rock Studios, and they have 2 locations. I can't prove to you which one. It could be California. It could be right there in Virginia. Castle Rock Studios is the #1 producer of president scenes in movies like Independence Day and the it's not White House Down. What is the one where they were it's like Eagle Down or Eagle One Down? I apologize. I know I'm messing up the title of that movie. But there's several movies that have used this facility for their realistic looking White House scenes. That's what they're doing. It's the same thing. There's only certain media people who have access to this area. There's a fake press conference area set up too, which only a select privileged few media are able to go into. These are ones that have probably been signed some kind of non-disclosure agreement, and then their footage is taken in and spread to other agencies who, modify it and use it as they need for their broadcasts, but it comes from very limited sources. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. But I want to I hope you see the connection here, how this is legit. What is happening is true. It does have a huge, long history of this. It is not a conspiracy. In the most realistic term, yes, it is a conspiracy, because these people did conspire to do this, but it isn't some whacked out kooky theory. It is true. This is happening. This has happened. It's hard to believe that people of this caliber would be able to get into a position where they can infiltrate and fraud an entire country and eventually an entire world like this. But it isn't something that just happened over 100 years. It takes hundreds of years. It takes certain mindsets and certain secret societies, like we've talked about in the previous episode. It takes all that and a warped way of thinking, as if, you had a child. You when you have your kid, you try to teach them how to live in the world and be a good human being and a loving human being and follow what they need to follow to contribute to society. And you want them protected as well as happy, and you want them to do well in the world. Well, that's not what these people taught their children. They did not teach them like a normal person. They taught them that they were of a bloodline that was superior to others, that they worshiped something that was the true God, that is of this world, and that they have certain privileges that 99.9% of the other people don't have. And it's not true, but it was made true. And because of our ignorance and because of our daily lives, we allowed it to happen, and here it is. So I'm going to take a break. When we get back here on All Aware, we'll continue going into this history of NESARA, and then lastly, I do want to talk about exactly what it's going to do. We haven't got to that part yet. What is it going to do for us in the world as Americans, as world citizens? How's it going to help us? I promise we're going to get there real soon, right after this on All Aware. Please stay tuned.
You are listening to the All Aware podcast on the TrueRants Network.
And I hope you will help support my show by going to TrueRants.net, click on shows, and then click on All Aware, and that will take you to the podcast hosting site for this All Aware show. You can also check out TrueRants.net and click the donate button. There's some pre-entered amounts, $1, $5, or $10, that will help keep this episode and this show afloat. And if you have a custom amount you'd like to enter, that's available too. And that's at TrueRants.net. Click the red button that says donate. And other than that, let's get back into GESARA. So we're seeing the buildup of what happened, how this came about over the 100 or so years into this system that we now have and that we're all used to, and that we take for granted as how it must be and how it is, and we just kind of accept it for what it is. Now we've got up to the bankruptcy of the corporation, the United States Corporation, that happened. The original bankruptcy was 1933. Now it is bankrupt in the 90s. And we've talked about Roy Schweizinger, whose father lost his farm in the early years of this silly ass land bank that was created by these bankers and these elites. When his father passed, instead of going to his son, the government came, or at least they claim to be the government. They're the corporation, but they use the government as their term of authority. They went and they confiscated the farm back to them. They took everything that Roy's father had made, and they took it away once he died. And that started this whole slew of things. He wasn't the only farmer that happened to. It happened to dozens and dozens of other farmers, and they created a farmers union and were able to make action in courts that were able to prove in the U.S. Supreme Court that what this agency did was fraudulent. It was against natural law. It was against human rights. And it even got to the point where we had executive orders being created by sitting presidents President George H.W. Bush, with his executive order, which said that if you have a claim against the federal government and you need payment, you can get that payment as long as you stand by the original format of the case. And we also had President Grant. One of the acts that I forgot to mention was the Organic Act of 1871. I think we mentioned it in the last episode. That act, in cooperation with the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1933, defined all citizens as enemy combatants under the Federal Reserve System known as the United States. The Justices and Farmers legal team they recognized how evil and corrupt the federal government had become, and further cases were brought, and a settlement to bring the government back under control was formulated. What they thought about, what they brought forward into the court in 1991 was the beginning of this NESARA program. There were certain items they wanted to be enacted in order to protect the American person from unlawful oversight and fraud. The number one demand in this case and these provisions that they set forward was that they be paid using a lawful currency, something backed by gold and silver, as the Constitution dictates. It would eliminate inflation and economic cycles that were created purposely by the Federal Reserve System. If you want more information on what the Constitution says about this, you can see Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. Secondly, the IRS, the United States corporation, would have to go back to common law instead of admiralty law under the gold fringe flags. Some people don't know that. You just see an American flag, you think it's just a flag, right? You just think maybe someone doctored it up when you see the gold fringe. No. Everything has a meaning. Every word that comes out of someone's mouth that represents the government, every symbol, every image, there are about 1,000 different things that it's telling you. The corporation had to have a way to represent itself so it wouldn't be so easy for the common folk just to look over there and see that it was not America, that it was not our republic. So what they did was they made a flag, the same exact flag of the United States Republic, and they put gold fringes around it. They put little frizzy, frazzly, dazzly things on it. And people thought, ooh, look, oh, that's so patriotic, that's so cute. Oh, that's just what they used to, it just shows government. It just shows that, they are who they are, and it's not anything out of the ordinary. But no, did you know it's illegal to alter the American flag? Yeah, it really is. It really is. That is not our flag. That is the flag of the United States Corporation. Under common law, let's go back to this. The second step in this provision that they put forward, the Farmers Union in 1991, after the United States Corporation was found to be bankrupt, they wanted us to go back to common law, and they said under common law, if there is no damage or harm done, then there is no violation of the law. This would eliminate millions of laws which are used to control the masses and protect corrupt politicians. So it's more of a natural law stance. A natural law stance says that if I am not hurting someone else physically or by other means, I have not committed a crime. I have no violation of the law. So these policies and these procedures and these fees and this administrative junk is all just that. It's all corporation policy. It's all corporation employee boss relations kind of things, right? Where we're their employee, they're our boss, and they have policies and procedures and guidelines, and if we don't follow them, we have repercussions. But in all honesty, as a free American under the Republic of the United States, following the real, true, and free Constitution of the United States, not this rehashed, reformed 1871 type of Constitution Act, we are free to move about. We are free to speak. We are free to do pretty much anything that you want that a free person can do, as long as what you are doing does not take harm in any way, physically or by other means, another person intentionally and under, or put somebody else under duress or intimidation. You have not done anything wrong. So all these crimes out there that we have that are these victimless crimes, things like driving your vehicle home, and after having alcohol in your system, you drive from point A to point B, that is technically not breaking any laws. Now, is it smart? Absolutely not. Could something happen if you're not careful, or if you don't pay attention, or if you are just so much under the influence that you can't drive? Can something bad happen? Yes. And then at that point, would you be liable for your actions that cause someone else's injury or death or property damage or etc.? Yes. But just to make a free will decision to get in a car, drive from point A to point B, get out and go into point B, that is not in itself a violation of a natural law or of common law. Being made illegal is a corporational statute. Other things, walking down the street after hours. There's a curfew, maybe, right? Imposed by your government during the coronavirus, or what they say was the pandemic is what they try to call it. Walking down the street after 10 p.m. Could you be picked up? Why? Well, because the governor says that you can't be out after 10 p.m. because of the virus. That is what a business would do. You can't come in the office after 10 p.m. because the office is closed. If you come in the office after 10 p.m., the security alarm would set off, and we're going to think you're robbing the place, and we're going to have you arrested. Oh, you're an employee here? Well, what were you doing here after 10 o'clock? You're shifting it at 5. See where I'm going with this? That is what a corporation would do. We're not corporations. We're free citizens. Anyways, getting off topic again. We're going back to NESARA, the founding of NESARA. The next thing in 1991 that was in this provision that they wanted the Supreme Court to acknowledge, it said the IRS would have to be dismantled and replaced by a national sales tax. This is the basis of the NESARA Law. This is where this came from. When the legal team finally settled on a figure, each individual would receive an average of $20 million payout per claim. Multiply that by a total of 336,000 claims that were filed against the U.S. federal government for illegally foreclosing or commandeering property. The total payout would come out to a staggering $6.6 trillion. The U.S. Supreme Court placed a gag order on this case. Why you haven't heard of it, struck all information from the Federal Registry and placed all records in the Supreme Court files. Up to the point Senator Sam Nunn had kept the Baskerville case records within his office. A settlement was agreed to out of court, and the decision was sealed by Janet Reno. The case was sealed. Claimants, when you seal a case, claimants are not allowed to share court documents to media outlets without violating the settlement, but they can't still tell others about the lawsuit. This is why you probably, haven't, like I said before, you haven't really heard of this unless you know specifically one of these 336,000 people or claims know of it. You wouldn't have heard of this. Out of this case came the knowledge of an attempt to create a new world order, which would bring a fascist one world government ruled by the international bankers. This was exposed during all this by Roy Schweizinger and his team. In 1992, a task force was put together consisting of over 300 retired and active U.S. military officers. Actually, 35 of those were active military officers who strongly supported constitutional law. This force was responsible for investigating government officials, congressional officers, judges, and the Federal Reserve. What was uncovered? Well, it's probably too much to go into tonight, but let's see what we can figure out. I would assume common come in things like bribery for fraudulent, people, extortion committed by senators and judges. They said that during their investigation, only 2 out of 535 members of Congress were deemed honest. They carried out the first ever audit on the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve at that point was accustomed to giving orders to politicians and had no intentions of being audited. After they were informed their offices would be raided with military gunpoint if necessary, they complied with the investigation. And after the files were reviewed by military officers, guess what? Found $800 trillion sitting in accounts, which should have been applied to the national debt. Keeping us in slavery through debt? I think so. Contrary to federal government propaganda, they also discovered that most nations had in fact, owed the United States instead of the other way around. Do we see why President Trump, was doing what he was doing? Maybe he was privy to some information about this that the common man was not. So we got out of the UN. He canceled several policies or world acts, if you will, or treaties that were harmful to the American people, that were just set up as cash cows, as ways to funnel money and fraud people under names that, of course, any good human being would want. The climate, peace accords, or whatever. These names, that the Green New Deal, all these names that you're gonna be like, oh, it sounds great. No, it's fraud. So to sum this up, as we're getting close to time, a lot happened in the 90s. This is when a lot of the revelations came out and why this system was brought to be. In 1993, we approached Clinton. High U.S. military officers met with Clinton to talk about returning us to constitutional law. The Clinton government undermined efforts on this. In 1994, several people were somehow came up missing or killed or just went quiet all of a sudden in 94 about this. 98, you get up to from 94 through 98. There was a battle between Reno, Janet Reno and others to keep this system intact. And this is where it's coming at now. It's been a war ever since then, and it's gone back and forth, and there's been white knights, and there have been black hats and everything else, whatever words you want to use to describe these people. And the banking wars have been going on. And that is why when Trump got in office, they got so scared. He wasn't a cabal member. He wasn't a member of these banking groups. He did have a lot of money, but he was a self-made, for the most part, millionaire, billionaire, whatever his net worth was, who was he actually isn't a Republican. I was going to say a republic, but it doesn't make any sense. He is a constitutionalist. He is for the republic. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He's maybe an independent at best, but I don't even think he's that. He doesn't care. He hates politics because he knows this stuff. He's seen this stuff. How do I know he knows this stuff? I watch him. I listen to him. I've seen his interviews. From now until back from forever. I've heard him on radio shows. Before the presidency thing even happened, I've seen his books and read some of the articles and the chapters, and I know mostly about what the man is about. He is a man, but he's a man that did something that no other man would have done, and he stood up under threat of death and of ultimate, basically, torture because of how they've portrayed him in the media and who he is and his legacy to his family is been skewed for a lot of people. I've had people blatantly call him just the worst things you could ever think of on Facebook and on social media, responding to my comments, calling him a narcissist and calling him a despicable human being and a tyrant of unknown disgust, things that you wouldn't wish be said on your worst enemy. They are being said, and people believe this. So this is what's happening, folks. This is what's happening. In 2000, late one evening, it was March 9, 2000, a written quorum call was hand-delivered by Delta Force and Navy SEALs to 15 members of the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House who were sponsored and co-sponsors of NESARA. They were immediately escorted by the Delta Force and Navy SEALs to their respective voting chambers, where they passed the National Economic Security Reformation Act. 15 members of Congress were the only people lawfully allowed to hold office in accordance with the original 13th Amendment, which is hence why they picked that number. British soldiers, if you remember, destroyed copies of the Titles of Nobility Amendment in the War of 1812 because it prevented anyone who had ties to the Crown of England from holding public office. So they wanted to protect what they were creating. So we go to October 2000. President Clinton had no interest in signing NESARA. So under orders from U.S. military generals, the elite Navy SEALs and Delta Force stormed the White House and allegedly under gunpoint, forced Bill Clinton to sign NESARA. During the secret interception, Bush Sr., the corporate government, that makes no sense. During the time, Secret Service and White House security personnel were ordered to stand down. They were disarmed and allowed to witness this event under a gag order. From its very inception, Bush Sr., the corporate government, Major Banks, and the Carlyle Group have opposed NESARA. To maintain secrecy, the case details and the docket number were sealed and revised within the official congressional registry to reflect a commemorative coin, and then again it was revised even more recently. So that's why there's no public congressional records, and why a search for this law will not yield the correct details until after the reformations are made public. Members of Congress cannot reveal NESARA. They've been ordered by the U.S. Supreme Court justices to deny its existence, or they could face charges of treason, and that's punishable by death. Members of Congress have actually been charged with obstruction. One day, Minnesota Senator Paul Wellstone was about to break the gag order. His small passenger plane crashed, killing his wife, daughter, and himself. If fear isn't enough to keep Washington in line, money is. So routine bribes are often offered to government military officials by the secret societies and power elites. They don't want this out there, guys. Now, we all know September 11th, 2001. But we all don't know why that was such a big day. We had a catastrophe that happened in the United States that is simply known as 9/11 now. All right. We had the Twin Towers attacked by an unknown enemy, killing thousands of Americans and New Yorkers and first responders to that building. But something else was going on in that building that may have been a reason for it to be attacked. On September 10th, 2001, George Bush Sr. moved into the White House to steer his son on how to block NESARA. Because on September 11, 2001, NESARA at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time by Alan Greenspan was supposed to be announced, and a new United States Treasury Bank was supposed to be created. There was going to be debt forgiveness for all U.S. citizens, and the IRS was going to be abolished. Coincidentally, though, just before the announcement at 9 o'clock in the morning, Bush Sr. ordered the demolition of the World Trade Center's Twin Towers to stop the international banking computers on floors 1 and 2 in the North Tower from initiating the new U.S. Treasury bank system. Explosives in the World Trade Center were planted by operatives and detonated remotely in Building 7, which is later why Building 7 was demolished, and it's pretty evident with video proof that it fell in what looked like a controlled demolition. That was to cover up their crimes. Remote pilot technology was used in a flyover event to deliver a payload of explosives into the Pentagon at the exact location of the White Knights in their new Naval Command Center, who were coordinating activities supporting NESARA's implementation. With the announcement of NESARA stopped dead in its tracks, George Bush Sr. decapitated any hopes of returning the government back to the people. And once again, the bad guys won. So for the past 10 years, and it's more than that now, life in the USA and numerous other countries has been dictated by the staged terrorist attacks and its repercussions. Seldom does a day go by that we do not hear mention of 9/11. And if you dare go through a year and not take a moment to stop on 9/11 and remember what happened, you are typically ridiculed, looked at like a terrible person. But maybe you already knew this. Not saying that those lives lost didn't matter, because absolutely they did. And they always will. And that is why we do stop for a moment of silence on that day. But we were not attacked as an act of war by an outside country. We were attacked internally by an evil class of people that didn't want us to get what we rightfully deserve. And that is our sovereignty and abundant freedom back. Unfortunately, the guy who was a big advocate for all this, Roy Swasinger, he ended up dying in 2009 at the age of 75. But obviously the work he did not leave us in vain, because it is still here and a new plan has been hatched to release it. In 2011, the debt ceiling debacle kindled renewed interest in NESARA. And as we watched the World Economy class, we saw that the NESARA Law was still there and it could work. So a plan went into effect to bring it to us once again. And this time, we're going to have it. And what is it going to bring? I promised you I would tell you what it's going to bring. And I'm going to do that right now. Before we go off the air, we've run 15 minutes over. So what's another 5? What is NESARA going to bring? It's going to bring abundance. It's going to bring peace. It's going to bring the ability to get ahead in life, to provide for your family if you're a man or a single parent or whoever you are, provide for yourself. It's going to bring a time like we've never seen before. Something that you couldn't even imagine, because we have been led so wrong all of our lives. There's nobody alive today who hasn't been under the guise of this secret corporation or this cabal, this U.S. corporation. So specifically, what's written in NESARA zeroes out all credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking and government activities to this day. It's the Federal Reserve's worst nightmare. It's called a jubilee, a forgiveness of debt, because it was an illegal action to create that debt in the first place. You unknowingly knew it, and we're going with what you were taught in the system. Boom, it's gone. Debt's gone. Keep your assets. All the income tax, it's abolished. We don't have income tax anymore under NESARA. Income tax is theft. Income tax is constitutionally illegal. The IRS, gone, abolished. The U.S. Treasury is going to be in charge of our financials and of a national sales tax, because a 14% flat, non-essential, new items only sales tax is going to be created. That's the only tax, the only type of tax that is legal. So food and medicine, you won't be taxed on, nor will you be taxed on used items, including old homes. They're used. They've already been paid for. They've already been taxed. You don't pay tax on that stuff. 14% flat rate, non-essential new items only sales tax. Boom. That's what pays for everything public that we need done and provides money to our government and our military and our public services. That's all we need. Benefits to seniors are going to be increased. We're going to take care of the elderly. Those people who took care of us and got us where we are, they're going to be taken care of. Constitutional law is coming back to the courts. That means all courts are going to change. The gold fringe flags are going away. The Republic flag is back. Everyone's going to have to be re-educated, because we're not under admiralty law anymore. We're under constitutional law. We're under natural law. Get all that out of there. Re-educate everybody. It's going to take some time. That is going to happen. The original title of nobility is going to be reinstated. New presidential and congressional elections every 120 days, the interim government will cancel all national emergencies and return us back to constitutional law. The interim government is here now, folks. Guys, girls, it's here. Remember I said there's 2 governments running? There is. I didn't get into the second one. That was the second one. You have Biden's fake government being shown to everyone in disguise of reality. Behind that, you have the interim government. I believe the interim government is being ran by Donald Trump, and it is going to cancel all national emergencies and return us back to the constitutional law. The military is who's heading this interim government currently, because we technically do not have a legitimate sitting president. So the office of the former president, which was created by Donald Trump soon after the faulty election of Joe Biden, is basically the interim government, and the military is the ones that are heading that up right now. A new U.S. Treasury rainbow currency backed by gold, silver, and platinum precious metals will be brought back, and it's going to end the bankruptcy of the United States that was initiated in 1933 by Franklin Roosevelt. American birth certificates are going to be forbid. You cannot to sell as chattel property bonds by the U.S. Department of Transportation. We are not cattle. We're not chattel. We're human beings. You can't take my birth certificate and sell it as a commodity, as an asset. No. Boom, that's done. It initiates new U.S. Treasury bank systems in alignment with constitutional law. Eliminates the Federal Reserve System. We've already said that, but maybe we haven't. The IRS, the Federal Reserve System, all the same. Eliminates the Federal Reserve System. During the transition period, the Federal Reserve will be allowed to operate side by side of the United States Treasury for 1 year in order to remove all Federal Reserve notes from the money supply. Happening now. Started back in Donald Trump's last year of his presidency, when he merged the IRS with the Treasury Department, and they're currently circulating out this money. Financial privacy restored. Judges and attorneys learn constitutional law. U.S. government military actions worldwide cease. We are not a warring nation. Establishes peace throughout the world. Because, again, this has gone global. So all the other governments have also agreed to this. So no more war. We don't need war. There's only a few people that benefit from war, and it's never us. Releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes. Let's build up them schools, them hospitals, those homes and everything. No homelessness. Why do we need homeless people? No. So we'll give you a little building over there, a little nicely constructed, modest building that you can live in. If you want to do better, get a job, better yourself, make some money, But every single human being on this planet deserves basic needs taken care of, which is food, clothing, water, relationships, the hierarchy of needs, right? Maslow, right? And the last thing that it's going to do is it's going to enable the release of over 6,000 patents of suppressed technology that are being withheld from the public under the guise of national security, including free energy devices, anti-gravity devices, and sonic healing machines. And that brings us to the end, and it's quite coincidental because on our next episode of All Aware, we're going to be talking about suppressed technology, including the free energy devices, the anti-gravitic spacecraft and military crafts that we have in the United States and world, and what are sonic healing machines, and what are these holographic beds that people are talking about now. We're going to go into all that next on the next episode of All Aware, and I really appreciate you tuning in. Find me on Facebook at All Aware Show or on Twitter. Let me know what your thoughts are. And like always, you're listening to All Aware, and you are all aware.